Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Finance and Public Services Overview and Scrutiny meeting. Just like to start the meeting, if you like, or pause the meeting with a minute's silence for Holocaust Day, please. If we can just time minute. Thank you. Right, okay. So, evacuation procedures then. A fire drill is not expected tonight, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Virgin Money building, formerly the Yorkshire Bank, on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by any of the fire exits which are clearly indicated by green fire exit signs. If you need assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. This meeting is being recorded for future publication on the Council's website, and can I please ask everybody turns off their phones or turns them to silent, please. I'd do that myself. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies, and so far I have apologies from Councillor M. Tromans, who's been substituted by Councillor Kyle Evans, Councillor T. Shepherd, who is being substituted by Councillor J. Shepherd, and Councillor J. Clark, who's been substituted by Councillor Hammersley. Thank you to all those who've given up their evening to come and substitute. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Am I okay to sign the minutes of the previous meeting? Can I have a proposer, please? A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kenner and Councillor Beetham. Councillor Shepherd, you wish to speak?
I do have a couple of items on before we agree the minutes. In terms of page 7, I know some members haven't got the paperwork because we're limited paperwork at the moment, but I'm sure that will be resolved in the fullness of time. In regard to myself and Councillor Phillips asking questions and having written responses back, we haven't received any written responses to the questions that we asked. In terms of youth contact and the Police and Crime Commissioner, and also I haven't had a response in regard to the data question I asked on page 8.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we just please have an amendment made to note the fact that the responses have not been received? On that basis and subject to those changes, are you happy for me to sign the minutes? Yeah. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest other than those which are printed in the schedule, please?
In regard to my declarations of interest, because they're not written on this schedule today, so it's a partnership member of the Hilltop and Caldwell Big Local, a member of the Management Committee at the Mental Health Drop-In, and Director of Wembley Community Centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. What I would add, perhaps, Victoria, if we can For those councillors that are substituting, if they've got any, that we can take their declarations of interest from the regular schedule. I take it none of the substitutes have got any additional interests that are not declared in that schedule. Thank you. Item 5 here is public consultation. I see we have Councillor Condacor in the chamber tonight who's speaking on item 7. Councillor, would you like to speak immediately before the item, or would you like to speak now?
Chair, can I just speak when the item's been introduced by the officer, so I know any changes? Thank you.
So, takes us to item 6 on the agenda, which is questions to Cabinet. We have 20 minutes for questions from the panel to members of the Cabinet, and we've got the 2 relevant Cabinet members here tonight, Councillor Croft on Finance and Councillor Markham for Public Service. And congratulations on your appointment to the Council. Does any member have any questions for any of the Cabinet members? Early bath for you two then. Would you have anything that you would like to bring to the attention of the committee or the panel? Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might make some remarks on item 9, but I'll be quiet for the moment.
Councillor Markham, would you like to bring anything to the attention of the panel at all?
I will be staying, but I might bring something up later in one of the other items.
Okay. Given that nobody has any questions, we can then move on to the next item on the agenda.
Chair,
Yeah.
sorry, regarding Cabinet, it says in the minutes that questions to Cabinet members, not that they're going to speak later.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate what you're saying, but given that we've got the Council Cabinet members here, I'm not inviting them to take part in the debate, but given that there's items on the agenda that concern their portfolios and we have their presence here, I'm happy for them to answer questions pertaining to the matter under debate, but not take part in the debate. So, moving on to item 7, Councillor Condacor, you'd... Councillor Shepherd.
It is in regard to the comments you just made to Councillor Phillips. My understanding was it was questions to the Cabinet members by this panel.
Yes.
And not for the members to be coming in later on in the report. So, can I ask, whether you want to do it today or not, I don't know. If you want to carry on as it, but I would like some legal clarification on that, because I'm a little concerned.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll stick by what I said earlier, which is that I'm not prepared to let the Cabinet members take part in the general debate, but given that there are items which are specifically relating to their portfolios, and we've got items on the agenda which they may be able to add detail to in response to questions, then I'm happy for them to intervene or to take part and answer questions at that stage in the meeting, rather than perhaps give some information now and then not be able to answer it at a later stage when it might be something that's pertinent. Thank you. So, I'd like to move on to item 7 now, which is the removal of the bus stops in Nuneaton and Bedworth, and I understand Councillor Condacor, you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. It's normal to speak after the item's been presented, but it doesn't really matter. I was really pleased the whole council unanimously voted to refer the question that Councillor Evans referred to the council about a resident who had problems when the bus shelter had been removed in Bedworth. Because one of my residents had a similar problem with the bus shelter opposite Lidl on the Hinkley Road. And these were removed without any warning to the residents or to borough or county councillors. And I understand that the operator no longer wanted to operate them, and instead the county council was going to take on a number of them that were significantly used. But I do feel that local councillors should have been asked, because we have local knowledge. You know, we see people stand at bus stops. We know where the doctor's surgery is and the shops and things. And we understand that some of them were not being used. And there's one on the Wellington Road, which was on the way out, and no one would really use it. Whereas the one opposite Lidl and next to the Grange Medical Centre, it was really important. Very few numerical people use it, because it's still quite close to the town centre. But for those going to the GP surgery, it was absolutely vital to have someone sit down and wait for the bus. And my particular resident took the bus from that bus shelter into the town centre and then back out to Weddington on a different route. But without that bus shelter to sit down, she now takes a taxi to the GP surgery. And I think the methodology of working out which ones to be removed was deeply flawed, because they only asked the bus companies. The bus companies seem to do a very cursory look of their databases. I'm not sure if it captured the people who are using season tickets, OAP tickets, and importantly, people who are actually using the bus for the return journey. Because obviously if you go to a GP surgery and you buy a return ticket, your ticket is from where you start rather than the GP surgery. So I'm really angry that we didn't actually get a heads up on these being reserved. So at least for one or two of them, we could say, hold on a minute, this is right next to the Lidl supermarket, and round the corner is the Grange Medical Centre. 12,000 patients have to go there because it's the only GP surgery for Weddington and St Nicholas. So this bus shelter, although only rarely used, is used by people who absolutely need somewhere to sit down to get their bus. So I am very angry it got removed. And it seems to be a bit of a grey area between the county council, who are taking them on, and the borough council that seems to be involved in putting them on and agreeing the advertising contract many, many decades ago. But I do think it's been done badly. The cost of maintaining them is £500 a year. The cost of the Foreign Secretary's flight to Australia is about £500,000 for one trip. So I think we could actually, particularly the county council being so rich, afford that £500. And final thing is, I've been told there's one in Stocking Ford which doesn't have a bus service. It's still sitting there. So that's another failure in the opposite direction. There's a bus shelter that should have been removed because it wasn't actually on a service. So this is where local members should have had a list. We're thinking of taking these out. Is this list correct? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacall. Move on to the reports. Do you have anybody to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Shail Chauhan from Warwickshire County Council. I'm the service manager for County Highways, so my service looks after highway assets in the main, carriageway maintenance, etc. And part of our remit is to maintain some of the bus shelters within Warwickshire. So I'll just give a quick presentation on the report for the benefit of the meeting. So in August 2020, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council officers approached Warwickshire County Council officers regarding the contract that Nuneaton had in place with a company called JC Decau. Now, the contract between the parties provided Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council with 58 shelters, which were maintained by JC Decau, on the basis that JC Decau would sell advertising on them to generate revenue to pay for the maintenance of the shelters. With the downturn in footfall across the country over the last couple of years, advertising revenue has decreased, and I think it was for that reason JC Decau approached Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council to say that they wanted to not renew the contract or terminate the contract. What this did was, at the end of that particular contract, JC Decau would remove all 58 bus shelters that they owned and maintained. Officers from Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council approached Warwickshire County Council to see if we could help in any way, because one of the other options put forward by JC Decau was for Nuneaton and Bedworth to purchase each shelter for £1,200 each. So the request was made for Warwickshire County Council to work with the Borough Council on this, and for the County Council to purchase the shelters and take on any ongoing maintenance costs. So officers at Warwickshire County Council had a meeting, and we concluded that it would be a sensible approach for the County Council to work with Nuneaton and Bedworth to purchase some shelters and take on the long-term maintenance of the said shelters. At the time, we don't have a budget for purchasing, a capital cost for purchasing shelters, and we have a limited budget for maintaining the current shelter stock that we have. So we concluded that it seemed prudent to assess the condition of each of the shelters, the quality of each of the shelters, and the usage of each of the shelters. So this was done in collaboration with officers at Nuneaton and Bedworth, officers from Warwickshire County Council, County Highways team, and the Transport Operations team. We work with, as Councillor Condecourt said, we work with bus operators and also our existing maintenance contractor to assess the condition and usage. This concluded that out of the 58 shelters, 39 were well used, and it was those 39 that the County Council and Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council purchased. The remaining 19 shelters would be removed by JC Decau, and the flagpoles would remain. There would remain bus stops for bus services to go to, but there would be no shelter in place. The capital cost to purchase the shelters was £31,000 to £31,200, and this was shared equally between Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council and Warwickshire County Council, so we split the cost of that. And the ongoing maintenance of the new shelters we've taken on is estimated to be £9,305 per annum. This puts an additional pressure on our existing maintenance budgets. That figure includes for general maintenance, so routine cleaning, electricity costs, and also repair of any vandalism damage that might occur. So, in conclusion, Warwickshire County Council were approached by Nuneaton and Bedworth for assistance. We didn't want to lose the assets within the borough. We purchased 39 of them in collaboration with the borough. The decisions we made were based on usage and quality of the shelters, and jointly we secured the vast majority of shelters, but unfortunately we did lose 19 shelters. Throughout the whole process, officers from Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council were either involved in meetings, tri-party meetings between the borough, the county and JC Decau, or were kept updated with any information that they were not party to at that meeting. So it was a joint approach all the way through. So that's now been done. The 19 shelters have been removed, and we're left with the remaining 38. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any member? I've got Councillor Evans indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's not exactly been a great 6 months for Warwickshire County Council Highways Department. We've got the unnecessary works on the A444 for the Bermuda Connectivity Project. We have Warwickshire County Council Highways Department failing in its statutory responsibilities in terms of not objecting to dangerous planning applications. And now we have a situation where our bush shelters are being removed across the borough, which are essentially a vital lifeline for the elderly population here in Nuneaton and Bedworth. In terms of my questions to Warwickshire County Council, I would like to know how exactly has the County Council generated its data on bus stop usage? Because I think that's really important for us to know and understand. Are you approaching bus companies directly for their own information, or have you done surveys over the last 10 years to try and establish what the usage is at each bus stop? I would like to ask the County Council how they've disposed of the shelters. Are they currently being held in storage? And if that's the case, if for whatever reason in the future, if they are still in storage, can the Highways Department look at actually refitting them back to where they were? I'd also like to know what work was done by the Transport Authority when JCDecaux decided to give us notice that they were going to basically withdraw their contracts with us, what work was done by the Transport Authority in trying to secure other companies within the private sector to take on the operation and costs of those bus stops? And I accept the argument that perhaps advertising has now changed, but actually, if you look across the border into the West Midlands, if anything, Transport for West Midlands are actually fitting more bus shelters in Birmingham, Solihull and Coventry. So there are innovative solutions, in my view, to actually protect those bus stops. I would very much welcome if the County Council can provide clarity on those matters.
Thank you. Are you able to respond to those points?
Yeah, I can respond to two of them. Might have to come back to one of them. So the first question was, how do we generate the data? And that was directly talking with the bus companies. I don't have the data with me, but I can provide that. That's not a problem. The second point about disposal of the shelters. So the shelters were taken out by JCDecaux, and I'm going to look to my left here, to my colleague. Do you know if they are in storage at all? Because I'm not personally aware.
No, because as part of the contract that was between Nuneaton and Bedworth and JCDecaux, it stipulated that JCDecaux would remove the shelters. So they owned the shelters. So they removed them as part of the contract with yourselves as Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. That was stipulated in the ongoing contract. So that they have been removed. I don't know whether JCDecaux have got them or not.
Thank you. And the third point was, it was a wider point around advertising and potential for other companies to take over. In response to that, with the work that we did, that wasn't, we didn't do that. We do know that, you know, we're in a particular situation at the moment with lower footfall and revenues going down, but looking at other private sector companies to take them over wasn't something that the County Council considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Warwickshire County Council, I know there's a cost involved in looking after these shelters, but I did notice in the paperwork there is a column which refers to furniture for the shelters. Now, the shelters that remain, are they going to be stripped because of cost, etc.? Are the seating arrangements going to be taken away and what have you in view of all of this money that's, you know, going to be used? I would be very, very sorry to see the end of seating and so on, because I'm elderly and I do use the buses. So I would like to see them maintained, and I hope the money will be there for the shelters, those that remain. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no plans to change any of the remaining shelters at all. They've been, we have a maintenance subcontractor that we use who routinely goes and cleans the shelters. They also carry out remedial repairs when there's vandalism, etc. So that's all been considered in the cost envelope that we've considered in terms of the maintenance cost for these. So they will be kept to a good standard, and we wouldn't seek to remove any of the seating associated with any of the shelters that we're talking about. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, how do you next come back in?
Thank you. I would like more clarification on the data question, because if we're approaching Stagecoach, Arriva, and they're basically supplying us data saying this is the number of tickets sold by each shelter, that's not giving us data on usage, because we have a situation where most bus shelters are used by an elderly population who in turn are going to have bus passes, and most of the time they don't have to scan bus passes, contactless scanning ways on buses, you know what I mean. They don't have to actually physically scan it. So the bus companies won't hold data on elderly people using those shelters. So what I'm basically hearing is if it's merely data about the number of tickets sold, we're going to see data showing that certain bus shelters where they're probably more closer to the town centre are going to have a higher usage because they've got younger populations, whereas our other areas of the borough with elderly populations, technically the data will show a much lower usage because people are in theory using bus passes, free bus passes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's fewer people using the shelters. So if you could provide clarity on that, or if you don't know the answer, if you could provide a written response to the committee, that would be helpful.
Thank you. I can't provide a response to that right now, but I'm happy to provide a written response to that question post-meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. A written response will be fine. Councillor Hammersley?
There is a large thing at the moment. We're trying to go as green as possible around the world, around the country, etc. With new electric buses, smart ways of using and paying, smart ways of finding out where buses are going. So I sort of went back to the roots to people. Why, older people and younger people, why do you not use the buses all the time? And quite a few of them said, I'm fed up to the back teeth of getting soaked to the bone. And now they're taking bus shelters down, so I'll be even more fed up, so I will book a taxi. And that goes against all the green reasons we're trying to encourage people to walk, cycle, electric buses, etc. So people are asking, rather than take them down, why don't we put more shelters up so that we don't get soaked to the bone and have to go to work soaking wet through school, college, etc. It just beggars belief. Thank you.
Councillor Beetham?
Brilliant, thank you. So, in regards to the bus stop removal, Thornton's Way bus stop was removed, it was on the list. This shelter provided much protection needed, much like all bus shelters do, but due to its placement, the wind there was more like a wind tunnel, and elderly and infirm residents have informed me that they went there because it was that protection from it to get the bus. So my question here is, do we know if any site visits took place, or if any additional consideration was given for areas that may need the greater environmental protection? And secondly, was there any consideration in the talks between Nuneaton, Bedworth and Warwickshire County Councils about consulting with the councillors, either the county councillors for the area or the borough councillors? And if there were talks about that, what reasons were given for those not taking place? Thank you.
Thank you. Your first point about site visits were made, but they were made to assess the condition, the existing condition, the physical condition of each shelter, so we fully understood the nature of the asset that we were taking on. On the second point about members being consulted, I can't answer for Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, but at Warwickshire County Council the decision was made at senior management level through corporate board. So that was the decision making process that was taken at the county council.
Any other member? Okay, thank you. Can we're asked to note the report as part of this meeting, but can I ask that we note the report, but also note the report and draw attention to the fact, Councillor Evans, you wish to speak?
Yeah, yes, happy to note the report, but I also think as one of the recommendations we probably should be writing to the cabinet member for transport at Warwickshire County Council to ask what the Highways Authority are actually going to be doing to try and bring back bus shelters, because we now understand why they were removed, but actually what are we going to be doing to bring them back? So I think we need that clarity as the committee.
Okay, Councillor Evans has made a proposal that we write to Warwickshire County Council to express.
I will second that, Chair, to see
Thank
what we
you,
can do
Councillor.
to replace the ones that have now got. Whether or not we can get another private provider, but it just needs looking at.
Is that an amendment to this proposal? Okay, thank you. So we've got that's been proposed and seconded. Take a vote on this. All those in favour of? Anybody against? No abstentions. Thank you. Yeah. So if we can note the report, write to the County Council. I think in noting the report we need to record the fact that dissatisfaction was expressed as to the methodology and that was used and the lack of consultation. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, the Civic Hall Bedworth Performance Report, which I think was circulated, but we have Katie here to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here to update on the Civic Hall Bedworth, for you just to obviously note the report. So as you'll all be aware, since the start of the pandemic in March 2020, the Civic Hall has been utilised as a COVID vaccination centre. So as the venue's been operating under that nature, most of the staff have been redeployed across the council, and we have some of the team that are working on site to support the delivery of the vaccination centre, opening, closing the building, etc. Warwickshire and Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust, the CWPT, had requested an extension until the end of March 2020. That is what we're working towards at the moment, to deliver the booster rollout programme, which I'm sure you'll agree it's obviously the biggest venue in the borough to utilise that service for the residents. The Civic Hall staff have worked across many different service areas throughout this period, supporting in roles that were vacant or across many different areas, which I'm sure shows their commitment, etc., to the council. The current financial forecast to the end of December 2021 was showing an estimated saving based on the forecast of just under £150,000 due to the nature of the current operation. All the Civic Hall shows that were scheduled up until June 2020 have been rescheduled for dates later in 2020 or further afield if applicable. And the Civic Hall team are continuing to work with the CWPT to support the delivery of the vaccination centre. The Civic Hall Business Improvement Plan is being continued to be reviewed throughout this period. There's some elements of that can't be addressed until an opening date is confirmed. However, elements that can be are being addressed during this period. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does any member have any questions on this item at all? As we're being asked to note the report, can we note the report? Happy for that to be done? Thank you very much. Here you go, thank you. So that brings us to item number 9, the formal complaints and freedom of information requests. We have a report on this. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. I think this report tells a journey, tells a story. I've been in post since June of last year. When I joined the authority, the way we handled complaints and Freedom of Information Act requests was quite tardy. It took a long time for us to respond, and sometimes quality was variable as well. And I think members of the various scrutiny committees expressed that same concern around the way the council was handling and responding to those complaints. The report in front of you tells the journey by and large from that point onwards. One thing the council has done is taken the handling of complaints and Freedom of Information Acts very seriously, and I'm joined today by my colleague John Sherratt, who's our Customer Experience and Data Protection Officer, and that's a new post created within my establishment with my teams to really provide coordination on behalf of the council and take it seriously and drive that forward. If you look at section 2, that talks about the way we handle complaints, and you will see that in the year from April to December 21 there was 776 complaints, so a reasonable number of complaints coming through. If you look at the table at the bottom of page 27, that shows the difference in performance of handling our complaints since my colleague has been put in post and since we put this renewed emphasis onto it. The number of complaints in October outside of the SLA, so our 10 working SLA at the time to respond to a complaint was around 70 and sometimes much longer, and many complaints would take a long time to be answered. Looking now, early January, very few complaints are handled outside of the SLA and they're much more responsive. And though we still get a reasonable number of complaints and it's customers' right to feedback to us, they are handled much more timely by the authority now, and that's a constant positive trajectory in the way we handle and the timeliness. Moving over to page 28, 29, that highlights our performance on Freedom of Information Act requests. Freedom of Information Act is a piece of statute, a piece of law, and it gives us quite tight time constraints on how we handle a request under that act. We have a set period of time, and to move outside of that SLA for all bar exceptional circumstances is technically quite the issue. Historically, we were well outside of that. It was taking some time to respond to complaints and a Freedom of Information Act request. And the table on page 28 highlights. Sorry, just bear with me. Page 30, apologies, not 20. Page 30 highlights the performance improvement on those performance measures. So in October, there was 57 Freedom of Information Act requests that were handled outside of the SLA, a considerable number waiting to be responded to. And in early January, that's fallen to 3, 1, something like that. That's an incredible change in where we are as an organisation. The table at the bottom of page 30 shows that split across our service areas. And if you look on the first row, past where it says the different sections, 436 Freedom of Information Act requests have been received in the period. And if you look at the column to the far right, you can see a difference of from 16 days to 9 days of the average time to complete and respond to that as an organisation. So again, there's a tremendous improvement in that area as an organisation. What I would say is this is a journey we're on and there's still work to do, and we're continually looking forward around not only how quickly we respond, because we're about there with that, but also the quality of response, and then what as an organisation we can learn from the closure of those complaints and requests, and how we can continue to develop our services. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any member? I've got Councillor Evans, Councillor Beetham, Councillor Kenner. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have to say, it's great to see that the process is more streamlined now. It's more professional. It's up to date. You know, we're moving with the times, and that's really good to see. We didn't have that system in place before, and of course that's resulted in us having a reduction in waiting times, which is obviously what we want. In terms of the table on page 28 about the number of complaints, you'll see under leisure and culture there's 240 complaints, and that's because I presume that includes grounds maintenance. I just say my own view on this as the former cabinet member for this portfolio is that it's incredibly unfair on certain departments in the council, such as the museum, leisure services, to be tied into grounds maintenance, because if people are looking at, you know, leisure and culture 240 complaints, you know, Mr. Bloggs on the high street is going to think that's 240 complaints about the museum or the swimming baths, and that's not the case. So would it be possible to take grounds maintenance and put that as a separate element within your tables?
yeah, we can certainly split it a different way and show that, particularly going forward. I think it depends on the categorisation of the system. So looking retrospectively might be a more of a challenging situation, but going forward we can report separately on grounds maintenance. What I would say about grounds maintenance as well, we've put a lot of energy and emphasis into that, working in partnership with Glendale's, the service provider, the parks team as well, the grounds maintenance team, and also customer services to approach it as a sort of an holistic group and try and get some better outcomes for customers. And if you look at the table you just referred to, you can see that difference of number of complaints outstanding. There was 195 before we invested in the post, and now there was 45, sorry, at the end of that conclusion. So things are moving in the right direction, and I would hope, even if we didn't split the data out, you know, in the new financial year, you would see a much lower number attributed to that service area.
Councillor Beetham.
Brilliant, thank you. It's going to echo the words of Councillor Evans. It's great to see such a dramatic decrease in waiting times for complaints, for freedom of information. This is really good for residents. Residents who I've had who have complained themselves have said they have seen a change for those who have had multiple issues and had to complain. The system is a lot more streamlined, as Councillor Evans says, and I just want to thank you and your team for getting this work down so residents can find their solutions and resolutions quicker and be more satisfied, hopefully, with the result. Thank you.
Councillor Kennan.
Thank you, Chair. Again, like my colleagues, I mean, I work in customer services myself, so to see complaints, you know, outside of SLA reduced by 90% in 6 weeks, it gives me a bit of a warm feeling inside to see. I've sort of got 2 questions. One of them will just help understand the table, particularly on page 27, but also a couple of the others. A complaint that's unallocated, is that where it hasn't been allocated to a specific individual to look into? I don't know if you can answer it or if you're happy answering anything. Just so I can understand and interpret the data a little bit better. And also, on a complete separate point, but to do with the work that's been done, these reductions in complaints outside of SLA clearly show a massive culture shift within the contact centre, within the customer services team. I'm just wondering if anyone can shed any insight on what work has been done to sort of see these massive changes. But thank you for everything that's been done so far, and thank you, Chair.
So I'll bring my colleague John in just a second. I think culture is absolutely the right phrase for it. What I've worked hard to do with colleagues is to put customer services and that customer focus firmly on our organisational agenda, right at the top of management team and then thereafter. And we've spoken about it in different political environments as well. It's a very important, you know, thing for the council, and it's important that we get it right. Unallocated does refer to where a complaint has been raised, and then for whatever reason, an officer or a department has not yet taken ownership of it. It's sitting there waiting to be adopted for then someone to investigate and respond. So not only is it likely to go outside of SLA, it was also very likely not to get looked at, kind of thing. So it's the worst situation that a complaint could be in. John's the chap that's been talking to people on the ground, really. So John, let me explain a bit about what you've been doing and who you've had contact with and how that's worked.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I suppose it is a bit of a culture change, and it is a step change in performance. I think I've worked with customers all my sort of career in various roles, and my kind of take on this was that it just needed a little bit of a push from myself and a little bit of help. So my kind of take on how I approach this sort of work is there'll always be a bit of a push, because ultimately there's an officer or a manager that's responsible for completing either a complaint or a foyer, but part of my role is to help that happen. So I think I've been working quite closely with a lot of people to facilitate a lot of change. The system we use is good, but it's not brilliant. And I think the other thing that I've been trying to do is get upstream of all this sort of stuff. So the first 4 to 6 weeks felt like I was just looking at complaints or foyers that had gone red and not been completed and chasing those all the time. The approach that I've got now is that I'll look at stuff sort of 10 days or 50% of the way through its SLA, and then start to kind of ask the questions so that we land stuff within the SLA, which I think was the key thing that wasn't happening before. And I'm new to this role. Everyone that I talk to seems to be really willing to kind of get involved, get engaged, which is brilliant in terms of that culture is already there in the council. It just needs somebody like myself to kind of keep building on it. So I'm hoping that when we bring the next report, it'll be even better than this. Ultimately, you know, my target is to get us to a point where we've got nothing dropping outside of the SLA, and we can look at the drill down by whatever service area department you want to look at, but also the quality of the response and the feedback we're getting from the customer is great as well. Thank you.
Just to add, is I guess John's manager really, it is about that relationship building. So what we're really good at now is building that rapport with managers, with service areas, with the customer, and managing it a bit like a relationship. So as things start to look like they might go adrift, we're not waiting for that complaint to go out of SLA. We're not waiting for us to make a mistake. We're picking up that phone and saying, do you need some support? Can we assist you? Okay, if you need more time, fine, but why do you need more time? Let's articulate that clearly to the customer, manage their expectations, and get that putting that customer back into that process. And just to, I guess, correct myself earlier, I mentioned that we'd invested in this process. I say investment in the broader sense of the term, because actually the work we've done has been cost neutral. We've not had to ask for additional funds or anything like that. We've used existing resources allocated to handling customer services and just done something a bit smarter with it.
Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the good work that you're doing to bring these numbers down. I just wondered, in this system, okay, we have as Councillor next to me said, that can these be categorised? Can this system be polished more so that when we see weaknesses in an area, these areas where they're failing because of complaints, they can be targeted by us to investigate why these complaints are happening in this department, and investigate why this department is failing, be it staff, be it the system, or be it whatever.
I'll bring my colleague in a second, but yeah, absolutely, that's another example of the cultural shift. So I think prior to this piece of work starting and myself coming in to look at it, complaints are very much a process-driven, factory-type process where customer expresses dissatisfaction. Let's try and get that out as quickly as possible and tick that box, and almost miss the opportunity to learn from it. And if it comes back as a stage 2 or whatever, then that happens, and we'll manage that. One thing we've done quite recently, actually, as a sort of second step towards this improvement, is as a complaint closes, is to categorise it so the manager that's had to respond to the customer to say, first of all, was this complaint upheld or not? Was the customer right in complaining? Have we done something wrong as an organisation? If so, what's the nature of that error? Is it an officer error? Is it the standard and cleanliness of our buildings? Is it a policy issue? They're unhappy with the policy we provide? And so on, really. So we're starting to categorise it in that sense. Thirdly, what lessons have been learned from that? So is there any service improvement work that's been identified? Is there something we're going to do differently going forward, or shape our services in a different way? So we're putting that into that closure log, and I guess prompting managers to reflect on the closure, to think, why have I got a complaint? Did something go wrong? And then what can I do differently going forward? And I think the next step thereafter is for that relationship to continue and to look at it and see, have we learned from that? Have we fixed that? John, I think you've got any more to add around looking at wider trends and that sort of thing?
No, I think at the moment we've got to a position where we're in, let's call it a good place in terms of numbers and response times. I think the next step is absolutely about feedback to the service areas, particularly any that are consistently outside the SLA or having to be really pushed. And I know there's always other reasons why you can't do stuff. And then I think what Tom alluded to, the feedback from the customer, I think those two pieces of work will probably be the next thing that I do. So hopefully we can then start to analyse where are the weaknesses, what can we do about it. I mean, incidentally, we do publish a monthly report which shows by service area what the sort of number of days it takes to complete a foyer and a complaint. And I suppose, ultimately going forward with my customer service head on, I'd like to see a customer service dashboard for each service area that we could drill down into and ultimately, kind of enhance our performance. But whether we get to that, I'm not sure. But I think the information's there. I think as we build up this culture of service, then I think more and more managers will get involved in it and start to get really interested as to why their figures are great or why their figures need a bit of improvement. So that would be kind of my answer. Thank you.
The member? Councillor Shepherd.
Just in regard to the service areas, you've got council property, you've got housing and housing property services. So I'm just a bit surprised on page 28. So I'm just surprised in terms of why council property is just there all on its own, because I would have thought most of our council properties are housing, unless you're going to tell me it's a business. So it was clarification on that. And in terms of housing, similar to leisure and culture, obviously as housing has so many different aspects to it, it would be useful to know whether it's a housing complaint in terms of a housing allocation or whether it was a housing repair complaint, because it looks like they're all going in that one box. Thank you, Chair.
So the headings provided there are probably what we'd call legacy headings, that they've come from however the system was configured whenever it was built. So the council had an existing complaints management piece of technology, part of its broader customer service software, and when that process was built, these are the categories that went into that. So that's probably 3-4 years old, something like that. So reflecting now, as Councillor Evans and Councillor Shepherd said, I think you can say we could drill down further and probably give some better data. Looking at that retrospectively, like I said before, might be a challenge, but I think certainly John and I can take an action to look at those headings going forwards, particularly into the new financial year, so it's a clean sheet from that point and looking at how we do that. And yeah, so I think just a bit of observation really. I've worked for a few different authorities, and probably services like housing, revenue benefits, waste management are always going to attract the greatest number of complaints because they affect people's lives. So people really care about how much money they're going to get, or the council tax. They care about the home they live in. They care about their bins. They care about the street they experience outside the house and grounds and that sort of thing. So those services are in the customer's attention all the time. So they're likely to complain about those more than other services. So the fact they peak in this table is a natural phenomenon, I think, based on customer exposure to it. But certainly we can try and drill down a bit further and see what's what really. And I would hope, as we've introduced our sort of post-closure reporting and that sort of thing, that when we present it in the future, we might be able to give you some analytics around actually what was the nature of those complaints and what we're doing about it as an organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, are you expecting an avalanche of complaints about the bins not being emptied? I think there's a domino effect from Coventry because they weren't empty today and certainly weren't emptied yesterday. Thank you.
Well, customers are dissatisfied by a process, so they may well choose to complain. As customer services, we try and preempt what our customers might want to contact us for. So, the contact centres and advising the contact centre will be sort of forearmed with the right information to explain what's going on and the reasons behind it. But yeah, it'd be natural to expect that some of that would translate into a complaint, perhaps justifiably so.
Thank you. Any other member? No. Thank you. I think we can ask for the report to be noted. Just record the thanks for the good work that's been done and the reductions that have been shown. And obviously we look forward to seeing more detailed information in future, and in particular I think we welcome to see what we've learned from those complaints and how we're going to drive forward in service improvements as a result. Thank you. With that, we've noted that report. We can now move on to the next item on the agenda, item 10, the museum performance report. Catherine, would you like to give us the report?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's worth me going through all the report blow by blow. So just to say, what I tried to give was an overall flavour idea of what 2021 was like for the Museum and Arts Service. It was obviously a process of transition. At the beginning of the year, we were obviously closed to the public and trying to offer what we could digitally. And since then, since reopening in May, it's kind of been like working through the gears to try and get back the service to what it was before COVID. We're not there yet, but we have started to reintroduce engagement activities, starting to add interactives to our exhibitions, which are so important to our family audiences. And we've seen a steady increase in visits since then. Last year was also a year where we started to bring a few projects to fruition, largely the Exploring Elliot project, and I have got a couple of the outputs from that there. And just to flag up a little bit about what's next, we mentioned the Nuneaton Abbey project in the report. We had a very successful launch on Friday afternoon with the community groups that were involved in that. And part of the funding we got from the Arts Council was also to provide an exhibition at the Abbey Church itself. There is a leaflet there inviting people to the drop-in session to see that exhibition. And we've had so many positive comments about the exhibition now it's opened. It's been really gratifying. Just to add a little bit context to I described some of the attendance figures for last year. We've had over 3,000 people in this January, so we think we'll be on for making about 80 to 90% of what our visits would have been in January 2019, before the world went slightly odd. And again, so I feel like we're moving in the right direction with our footfall. In the coming months, we have just reintroduced our talks, lunchtime talks, and we'll be reintroducing family events, hopefully from sort of March, April time. Clearly, work continues on the redevelopment. We've been working with Purcell Architects, and the scheme is now with our planners. I've brought along a few of the concept drawings if anybody wants to have a look at those. There's still quite a lot of hard work to do. There's an awful lot to finalise about how the building will be built, its content, its exhibitions, and we're still mulling over the consultation we did in autumn last year to really get a sense of what people really want to see when they come through the doors, and actually what will motivate them to come through the doors. And there'll be some more work to do with those people who don't visit us currently to find out how what we offer in the future can motivate them to visit more regularly. So there's that work to do, and then there's the business case of the Towns Fund, which we will be building to hopefully secure that government funding for this project.
Thank you very much. I'll open this up to any member who has any questions, Catherine. Councillor Kenner.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much of a of a question, just more of a thank you for doing so much work with the Abbey, especially as recently they've just entered the latest stage of their 867-year history with a new vicar. So I'm pleased to see all the work that's been done with the Borough and the Museum, with the Abbey Church, the church that gave Nuneaton its name. So thank you.
Councillor Harbison.
Thank you, Chair. I've made no secret of my love for the museum. It's got a special place in my heart. I thank you both for coming here, obviously putting forward that. It's fantastic. From looking at everything that's going to happen, I'm extremely positive. Obviously, again, I always say this, it's in my bit, so obviously I'm cock-a-hoop about it. I think it'll improve the general way, the general nature of the park, which is already, in my opinion, a lovely park, even with its slight flaws. It just continues to add. All of the projects that you've said that you're working with, absolutely fantastic. There's, it really does lift the energy of the town generally, in my opinion. and I'm hoping that there can be more cooperation between all the agencies involved in future. And if you need any assistance from me, don't hesitate to ask. And thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further comments, questions? Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. It's in terms of the interactive pages we put on our website during the pandemic that were really appreciated by those families that couldn't get out. Are we going to continue that over half term so those families that actually still don't feel comfortable about coming out into the wider museum?
Yeah, we can certainly keep adding to our museum at home page. Yeah, I think one of the challenges over this period is how to balance all the things we have going on indoors and yet still maintain those services outside. Doing the digital stuff has been really valuable, and as you'll have seen through the Exploring Elliot thing, for some people who are still very isolated, it can be a massive game changer in terms of their mood. One of the projects we mentioned was the choir, and we're looking at how we can find the money to continue that. We think we're going to be able to do another couple of months of the choir because that seemed to have been particularly valuable for people's mental health and well-being. So yeah, we're committed to try and continue to balance those two things. So because we've always known that there were people who had disabilities and things that made it very difficult to make regular visits. So it's really how we continue to serve them as well. So thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to the case of the Victoria and Albert Museum and their national non-domestic rates and the Supreme Court challenge with the Valuation Office, can you provide an update to the committee on where we are with that in terms of trying to recover money from the Valuation Office?
I admit I haven't chased this since I got back from Christmas, but we still seem to be in a holding position with the Valuation Tribunal and them deciding how they were going to move forward. For those of you who don't know, museums have traditionally been kind of evaluated as a kind of business, really, rather than perhaps the unique cultural properties that we are. A number of national and regional museums took the Valuations Tribunal to court, I think about 2 years ago now, to challenge that. And it was agreed that there would be a different method of evaluating our business rates, which will presumably, in our case, make considerable savings. But they don't seem too keen to move forward with making those changes or giving that money back. But I will chase it up with my colleagues, Mark Bilby, and can give you a written response. Okay.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, can I ask that we note this report, please, as per the agenda? Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation and answering the questions. So that takes us forward to the forward plan. Sorry? Just noting, anybody got any comments on this one? Thank you. Same with the work programme, which we move on to is item 12. Any comments on the work programme? Anything you want to add to the work programme? Thank you very much. As there are no other items, thank you very much for your attendance tonight. Thank you.